Good afternoon. It is so lovely to be performing here again. I think this is my fourth solo performance at the Hugh Lane Gallery, and it is always such a pleasure for me to share music with you all. This afternoon's concert contains 3 pieces. It has been a long time in the planning, dating back to March 2020, when I first approached Siobhan Cleary with the idea of commissioning a new work. And then in April 2020, I received a new piece from my friend and collaborator, Christopher Fox. And the final work in the programme I have performed many times, Gráinne Mulvey's The Seafarer. It has been such a pleasure for me to work on these pieces from 3 wonderful composers who I've worked with collaboratively on a number of projects. And for this afternoon's concert, I'm delighted to welcome Linda O'Shea Farren, Projects, Programmes and Event Manager with the Contemporary Music Centre, who is going to lead a composer's voice discussions with the composers and myself to put these new works into context.
Who's here today, and myself and all at CMC. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to introduce the audience to our fantastic composers. And first up, as Elizabeth says, is Siobhan Cleary. It's a world premiere, Siobhan. The world premiere of any new work is always a major occasion. And Sleepsong, which you composed specifically for Elizabeth, and the wonderful surroundings here of the Hugh Lane Gallery is indeed such a major occasion. Siobhan, can you tell us a little bit about the text you used for Sleepsong and why you chose this particular text?
I think I got to know the text, well, it's going back maybe 30 years at this stage, in a little book by Gerard Murphy, which is a collection of early lyrics from Irish poetry. And I think myself and Liz were discussing a lot about what kind of a text we wanted. And I've always been drawn to Middle Irish and Early Irish. So this one came up, as being a good fit.
Perfect. And Elizabeth, you commissioned this new work using funds awarded by the Arts Council on Chomhairle Ealai. Can you explain the origins of this commission?
Yes, Siobhan had written a piece for me a number of years ago, Caoineadh Airt Ui Laoire, and I've sung that a good few times. It's for voice and piano, and obviously setting the great Irish epic poem by Eileen Ní Chonaill. And I wanted do you remember March 2020? It was all quite miserable. I was listening back to different pieces I'd performed, and I loved that piece. And I was like, well, at some point I can sing again. And I'd love to put together a programme. And I think originally I was thinking voice and piano. Let's have a new piece for voice and piano. But then, the conversation developed, and it was, a long process. But it started with that original conversation.
It's always nice to hear of an open commission, sort of like that the artists can take forward themselves. And at CMC, we love to hear these stories. So Siobhan, many of your works, you just said there, you've always had an interest in the Irish language and folklore. What actually sparked that interest in the first place?
Well, I think I've always been interested in mythology and folklore. I mean, not just Irish folklore, but like as a child, I was very into the Arabian Nights and some of the, Greek myths for children and things like that. Then I studied Irish, so that opened up a lot of, opportunities for undiscovered texts, really, stuff that would be in old manuscripts. And during the study of Irish, I was able to learn a little bit of early Irish and Middle Irish. It's also, I find it a very good language to set. It's a lot easier than English in a lot of ways. And I'm very lucky as well that Liz is she's got a great intuition about the Irish language. She sings it beautifully. So I thought, a really good fit for her.
Fantastic. It is a beautiful language, of course. And Elizabeth, some of the collaboration for this work, because there's been a very collaborative work, it occurred in the model in Sligo, where you had a residency. And of course, Sligo is very connected with Diarmaid and Grania and the cave of Diarmaid and Grania and everything. Can you tell us about that aspect of the collaboration?
Yes, so this piece, as you'll hear it, it has pre-recorded lines of my voice. And I suppose there was quite a few iterations of this. I'm actually in no way an expert in recording, but I did record quite a few sections at home, and I was sent them to Siobhan, and everything was online, so I'd record it, send it to Siobhan, and then we'd have a conversation about it, and also she'd be then able to build the tape part. But it was kind of like a mock-up version of the tape part. So I had a beautiful residency in the Model Gallery in Sligo. It's a wonderful contemporary art space. They have a Yeats collection there, the Neeland collection, and they have an apartment. So I was living above the Model Gallery for a month, and they allowed me to invite Siobhan, and Fergal came as well and assisted us. So we recorded what you're going to hear today coming through the tape. Was recorded in their studio.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And before we hear Elizabeth perform the world premiere of this wonderful new work, Sleepsong by Siobhan. Siobhan, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about, Soon 3 and the 3 noble strains of Irish music, and also your compositional approach generally to the sound world you wanted to create for this.
That's a big question. So the idea of this, it is a Soon 3. And a Soon 3 does kind of translate into a lullaby, but there's something more in the Irish literature. It's often something that conjures up something. So I was using this as Grania weaving a spell around Diarmaid to protect him after, during the pursuit. Obviously he's very distressed and she wants to comfort him. So what you will hear is layer upon layer upon layer of Liz's voice coming in. And it's as if each iteration of the sound is like another protective spell on him. So I just wanted to say a quick thank you to Fergal for all his work on this. He did record a lot of the voices, and he also did a max patch, which kind of makes it easy for us just to do it in this way. And he's helping us out here today as well.
Thank you.
Just a quick thank you to Liz for commissioning this. It's so wonderful to have somebody of Liz's stature to work with. We always know we're in great hands. So.
You're in for a treat, I think. Thank you very much, Siobhan and Elizabeth, and we'll leave the stage. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. That was wonderful. And of course, ending with the word Codail, which means sleep in Irish. So we're having a feast of world premieres today. Christopher Fox here has also a world premiere composed specially for Elizabeth. Shroud is a very personal work for you, Christopher, as it relates to the passing of your wife, Susan McNally. So unfortunately, this world premiere is tinged with some sadness. Christopher, can you tell us a little bit about the background of Shroud and why you chose this particular text?
Yes, so in 2018, my wife was dying, and I was looking after her at home, and anybody who's been in that sort of situation will know that you kind of move into a world which is not quite, well, it's completely not under your own control. It has a different rhythm. It has the rhythm of hospitals. It has the rhythm of how the illness progresses and so on. And I'm not the sort of composer who dreams music very often, but twice that year I did. And the first time was sort of, I think in May, and I woke up and there was sort of clanging bell-like music in my head. This is not that piece. And then a few months later, I woke up and I thought, oh no, there's some sort of singing going on, and it's just gone. And then I gradually tried to work my way into that, and things happened, and Susan died at the end of 2018, and so I was mostly involved in that. But I had this memory and a few sketches of the piece, and an idea about the quality of the language, and then I thought, it needs to be there needs to be some words. They need to be to do with this world of dying. And then I thought, Anna Akhmatova, she wrote a lot about. And then I found this really marvelous translation by Richard McCain. I was just on spec ordered about 3 Akhmatova books, and there was, in the midst of many other things, there at the bottom of a right-hand page, there was this verse, and I thought, no, that's it, that's exactly it. And then it just sort of came from that.
Thank you very much, Christopher. And Elizabeth, he chose you to do the world premiere, which is obviously a major privilege. But Christopher has composed many works for you, among them Sea to the West, which I know you perform a lot, She Dreams, She Dances, 13 Songs About the Moon. And can you just tell us a little bit about this long-time composer-performer partnership and how it came about?
Yes, well, I'm a big fan of Christopher Fox's music. My partner, David Bremner, played a piece, Lick and Killer. Like probably 2006, 2007, I first came across there. It's a wonderful piano, really, it's fabulous. I love it. And so then I think you came over for a piece with the Crash Ensemble, and I went to that, and I was like, "Oh, that's Christopher Fox. He's really scary, big composer. Well, he's very tall." And so I didn't say hello. But we have a company bail, and we invited you to come over. We performed with Ensemble Bail, performed one of your works. So you came over, and I think I performed on the Wednesday night. I did some solo songs, and you were like, "I want to write a piece for you." And we had lots of chats about it. And then I think Evangelia Rigaki invited Christopher to give a talk at Trinity College Dublin. So I, of course, went along, and I can't remember what time of night it was. You were like, "I think I'm definitely going to write a piece." So that's where it all started, 2012.
And that gives you a little window into how composers and performers team up, and how then somebody like Elizabeth springs to mind when Christopher composed this very important piece for him, which isn't a commission, unlike the first work. So, Christopher, throughout your career, you have worked sort of with various composers for long periods of time. You've formed deep relationships with them, like you have with Elizabeth. So, can you just tell us what you're looking for in a collaborative partner?
Well, I'm looking for someone like Liz, really, who can do anything and makes a fantastic sound and has an amazing attitude. That's it, really. I was very lucky in that I think about I mean, this is a ridiculous story, just yawn if it gets. But in 1977, I was in York as a postgrad student. The York Early Music Festival started up. They had formed a choir to sing in it, and I was recruited as a tenor, even though I'm not really a tenor, but they were short of tenors, as choirs always are. And I was standing in the first rehearsal next to this other tenor, and after the first break, he turned to me and he said, "You're not really a singer, are you?" And I said, "Well, nor are you." And he was a clarinetist, Roger Heaton, and we have worked together ever since. And he has exactly the same, basically, you need great friends with amazing ability, which Liz is.
Yes, she has that in spades. A can-do person is our Elizabeth. So, Elizabeth, you have included 2 world premieres in today's concert. It's obviously a wonderful privilege to be composed specifically for, but it's also, a responsibility, or there's a process to it. So can you just tell us about how you approach world premieres as opposed to works you've performed before?
Yes, it's always that worry of, I was saying this to Fergal earlier, we met up yesterday and I was really nervous because I've been working on this piece for ages, and I quite like the way I do it. And so we met yesterday and I sang it through and I was like, please God, let it be okay, because I've only got 12 hours or, it was 18 hours I was going to have to turn it around. But I think it was okay. We had a few adjustments. But sometimes, your own, I see the score as an invitation to make the piece of art in the room become alive and to share it with an audience. But I take on a lot of that responsibility of making it my interpretation of it. Not that I'm saying, well, my pieces always need to do something. You'll hear this doesn't sound very similar at all to Siobhan's piece, and yet they're both my interpretations of pieces. So yeah, I was very nervous, and I think I always am to perform the piece for a composer, because they can just say no. And no, I didn't like that. Or they could say, my favourite bit that I've been working on, I absolutely love. They're like, I actually don't like the notes I've written there. Could we just change them? And of course, you have to just change them. So, but anyway, that's my thoughts about world premieres.
The inner workings of composition and performers, collaborations. So, Christopher, before we hear Elizabeth perform this very meaningful world premiere for you, can you just... I think it could be described as sparse, or there are silences. Can you talk to us a little bit about your compositional approach to this particular work?
Yeah, I mean, that one could hear it as a piece with a lot of silences in it. But I don't... For me, that's not what happens. In the piece, Liz sings, and she sometimes talks, she speaks words, and sometimes she hums. And then in between... there are passages where nothing's apparently happening. But for me, it's actually very busy the whole time. It's just that most of the time we can't hear what's happening. So I think that's the way to think, maybe a way to think about it, that the words are running along all the time in Liz's head and around us, but they only sort of surface every now and then. So the bits in between, you may hear them as silences. I don't.
But that's the perfect segue for the world premiere of Shroud by Christopher Fox, to be performed by Elizabeth Hilliard. Thank you.
slipping away from myself, half away. The edge of sleep. Something. This. Calling. Was half of this. No sleep, I was half myself. The edge which slipping from this has this. Something from sleep. On which? On which? From the edge. On this, this, of calling, which sleep. Calling myself on. This, no, away, was something this something. This half-calling which has no name. No. No sleeping sleep I was. Calling this name which was on the edge. This something which has half calling. Of something. This myself. I was calling, I something half away from this. No sleep. Something. I was sleeping, I was this name, away, this half sleep. This sleeping away, this half sleep. This calling. I was something, no name. This. No name. This, half away, the edge of sleep, something, this calling on myself. I was slipping, sleep, no calling was half of this, no sleep. I was half myself, the edge which slipping from this has this away, calling something from sleep on which I, from the edge of this, no sleep, calling myself on. This no away was something, this slipping away from something. Was I calling, was something on. This half calling which has name, no slipping sleep was myself. I slipping calling this name which was on no half on this edge. This something which has half calling the edge from something. This on myself. I was calling, no, I on something. Half away from this, no sleep. Something slipping, I was, this name has, away, this slipping, half on, has, calling away, I myself was something, was this. I was on the edge of something to which I cannot hang a name. This half-sleep calling. This slipping away from myself.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. We continue the theme of loss. This work is very different in that it's not a new commission. It was composed, in fact, 10 years ago. And it's wonderful, alongside world premieres, to have subsequent performances as well as brand new works. Because composers also need their works to be heard many, many times over. This work, Caoineadh, can you tell us a little bit about the background? Because, as I said, it has its origins in loss, as the Shroud did.
In 2011, a friend of mine, Untitled Chapter, died of breast cancer. Her brother is a soloist, a flautist, and I've worked with him and still work with him many times. But I was asked before she died to write this piece based on the Seafarer, which is from one of the books of Exeter, and it's about mourning and loss. So it's an elegy, and she wanted to have it sung at her funeral service. So it's quite an unusual request to get when somebody's alive to write something for a service as such. So she died before I could get the piece even finished. She died a month after she'd written it. We thought that she'd last a long, at least a year, but she didn't. And so what happened then subsequently was that Elizabeth and David, who were involved in the Bale Festival, asked me would I like to have something done. And Liz, I've worked with Liz so many times, and she's a brilliant exponent of my work, and I love working with her. She's got a fantastic voice, and I got this opportunity to have it then performed then. So.
Sure. So again, another very, very unusual commission in that it's a very personal commission as opposed to an Arts Council funded commission, which Siobhan's was, and a piece that composer Christopher Fox decided simply to write himself in honour of his wife. So we've had, Elizabeth has as usual chosen an amazing array of interesting works. So Elizabeth, Caoineadh mentioned the Bale Festival. You just tell us a little bit about that context and why that became the occasion on which this work was premiered 10 years ago.
Yeah, so sadly I never met Una, but Caoineadh, you had told me about the request, and I was completely willing to do it, and I was so shocked when, as Caoineadh says, we got the news a month later. So I said to Caoineadh, we're putting on Bale Festival in November, would you like us to programme the piece? So we did.
Yeah. And Caoineadh, it's obviously a very personal piece to you as well, but can you give us a little idea about your compositional approach? Because for something like this, it takes a very sensitive approach.
Yeah, it certainly does. And then singing it in a church, so I had all these other issues in my head about how to approach it. One thing I thought was I'd have something modal so that it would be, elegiac, and it would actually have that conveyance of sorrow and sadness, and that you could program it in a service and it would work. It wouldn't be too angular or whatever. And then I set about asking Liz to record sounds and different things. So I had her voice and worked on sibilants from sea sounds and sounds of her vocalizations and that, and was able to just change and manipulate them and even make bell sounds out of it. She's got such a really great range, a fantastic voice, that even when you synthesize it, you're almost overwhelmed at the array, the spectrum there that's available from the voice. It's just incredible. So with her help, I was able to construct a tape part, and this then led to having sea sounds as well, accompanying it too as another kind of layer. And it worked from there, I think, and she does a great job on it all the time.
Elizabeth, in terms of creating those vocal sounds, can you just give us a little intro?
So yeah, we met in DIT. We don't always meet these. Well, I suppose even pre-COVID, we stopped meeting to make the tape parts. Caoineadh normally now sends me quite a long text, and I just go into a room and it's like, do some giggling. But this one, we were a little bit more serious. We met in, it was then DIT Rathmines. it doesn't exist, it's a Montessori school, I think, now. So DIT Rathmines, and we had a beautiful big room, and she brought the text. We kind of explored a few different options of kind of the vocal lines, and also, you know, she'd say, could you record some sounds of s, or could you do it liss? Now, when you hear the piece, you won't hear any of that glisses, and I believe when she made the bell sounds, it was from kind of extracting moments of that gliss, and I presume layering them on top of each other. I'm not great at technology, but yeah, it's always really fun to make those tape recordings, and then to see it's completely different. It doesn't. I mean, it is all me. It's Kinsale, I think, at the end. The C, yeah, the C from Kinsale, or is it Spain?
Well, actually, so it's from Barcelona, and there's a bit of Sandy Cove, I think, there too, and Kinsale.
How joyous Ian with Sandy Cove thrown in. We should just mention, Caoineadh, that the text, The Seafarer, was actually chosen by Una herself, who was an English scholar, and it's being given the title The Seafarer, it suggests sounds, music sounds. So before Elizabeth performs this work, we'd just like maybe Caoineadh to say maybe a few words about Una.
Una, yeah, she was an English scholar, so she studied Arthurian literature and Old English texts, and that were her love. And she loved, different tales, old English tales, and that. And she got a PhD, before she died, and she just. That's really it. I can't say much more, but she was a lovely person.
Great. Thank you very much. We now have the performance.
Thanks to Liz, and thanks to Fergal, and thanks to you, Linda. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Make a true song about me. Myself, wretched and sorrowful on the ice cold sea, wretched and sorrowful on the ice cold sea. Days of struggle, troublesome times, sorrow at heart. And sorrowful on the ice cold sea, I wretched and sorrowful on the ice cold sea, ice cold sea.
icicles, see. Icicles, icicles, sea. Icicles, icicles, hail. Icicles, hail.